Newlyweds Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce still in their wedding era, attending another couple's nuptials in their first outing as husband and wife.
Yeah, I'm completely enjoying the moment.
We gotta party it up. We gotta celebrate. We gotta have a good time.
1,000 guests entered one of the most recognizable buildings in New York. Police closed streets beside the busiest train hub in the country, and crowds watched black vehicles disappear behind curtains. Yet a week after Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce married, no verified photograph showed the ceremony, the finished room, or Swift's complete gown. The wedding was never invisible. Its outline was everywhere. What remained hidden was the experience itself. Pulling that off required more than secrecy. It required architecture, permits, controlled information, legal agreements, and a boundary strong enough to survive global attention. The venue was the first layer of security. Madison Square Garden looked like an extravagant choice, but its operational value mattered more than its fame. The arena routinely moves performers, athletes, equipment, staff, and invited guests through routes separated from the general public. The practical consequence is easy to miss. A building designed for major productions could turn privacy from a wish into a manageable system. The approach was expensive, disciplined, and remarkably effective. The Garden's limited public sightlines made ordinary paparazzi tactics less effective. People outside could watch entrances and roads, but they could not look through hotel windows or survey a lawn from neighboring property. That detail changes the interpretation. The structure reduced the number of places where an uncontrolled camera might reach the event. That boundary made celebration possible without making intimacy public property. Covered internal access and loading infrastructure created options that a conventional wedding venue could not match. Vehicles could approach protected areas, unload passengers behind barriers, and leave without exposing every guest to a line of photographers. The operation depended on this distinction. Movement became predictable because the building already understood high-security arrivals. The result: limited access without requiring the public to ignore the event. The source transcript treated the arena rumor as a possible decoy designed to expose a leak. That idea sounded clever, but lacked proof, and the marriage ultimately occurred at the Garden. Seen as a system, the logic becomes clear. A dramatic counter-theory was less useful than the practical explanation visible in the venue itself. Privacy emerged from the complete chain, not one dramatic trick. Swift's familiarity with the building also reduced uncertainty. She had performed there, understood large event production, and worked with teams accustomed to strict schedules and credentialed access. The public version captured only the surface. Choosing a known operating environment can be safer than selecting an idyllic location with weak infrastructure. The evidence supports restraint instead of invented certainty. The choice of venue also changed the meaning of scale. In an exposed location, more guests would create more vulnerabilities because every arrival expands the perimeter. Inside an arena, greater capacity can improve control by distributing people across designed corridors, service zones, elevators, checkpoints, and rooms. The Garden could host a large celebration while keeping ceremony areas distant from entrances and exterior walls. That does not make the event small or ordinary. It means the couple selected a machine built to manage crowds, then used its industrial logic to protect an intimate purpose. The romance existed inside an infrastructure designed for repetition, discipline, and controlled flow. A proper threat assessment would separate curiosity from danger. Most people outside wanted a glimpse or a celebratory photograph, but a protective team also had to consider unauthorized entry, crowd surges, drone observation, traffic blockage, medical access, fire evacuation. and the possibility that one predictable route could attract a person with harmful intent. The safest design could not assume every observer was harmless simply because most were. It had to reduce opportunity without turning the surrounding neighborhood into a permanent fortress. The arena's existing command structure, surveillance, emergency procedures, and trained personnel gave planners a foundation that a temporary estate installation would have struggled to reproduce. An outdoor estate might have offered romance but introduced drones, neighboring viewpoints, marine access, weather exposure, and long perimeters. A luxury hotel could control rooms yet still contain guests, staff, and windows beyond the couple's direct supervision. The practical consequence is easy to miss. The arena concentrated risk inside a professional shell. The approach was expensive, disciplined, and remarkably effective. The size of the celebration became an argument for the garden rather than against it. Reports described roughly 100 people at the smaller gathering and about 1,000 at the main event. That detail changes the interpretation. A venue built for far larger audiences could absorb that number while maintaining distance between ceremony, reception, service, and arrival zones. That boundary made celebration possible without making intimacy public property. Space also allowed the interior to be rebuilt as a private visual world. Greenery, trees, flowers, drapery, and scenic construction reportedly transformed the arena into a garden environment. The operation depended on this distinction. The couple could create intimacy through design without accepting the vulnerabilities of an actual garden. The result limited access without requiring the public to ignore the event. The public saw trucks and wrapped materials, but not the completed setting. That separation preserved surprise for guests and prevented unfinished construction from defining the event online. Seen as a system, the logic becomes clear. Production secrecy protected both emotional privacy and aesthetic control. Privacy emerged from the complete chain, not one dramatic trick. The venue therefore functioned like the outer wall of the operation. It did not stop people from knowing that something major was happening. The public version captured only the surface. It stopped knowledge of the event from becoming unrestricted access to the event. The evidence supports restraint instead of invented certainty. Permits revealed the outline, but protected the interior. A private wedding of this scale still had to interact with public government. Street closures, tents, loading activity, police deployment, and traffic changes required permits and coordination. The stronger evidence points to coordination rather than magic. Fame could not remove the city's administrative requirements. Accuracy reveals a more interesting operation than rumor ever did. The application requested closures around the garden from July 2nd through July 4th. It described a drive-through tent, a separate entrance tent, and operational needs that could not be concealed once the filing became public. The practical consequence is easy to miss. The paperwork exposed the event's logistical outline before the couple confirmed its purpose. The approach was expensive, disciplined, and remarkably effective. Public records created a paradox. The same permissions needed to protect the wedding also generated clues that helped reporters identify the date and location. That detail changes the interpretation. Security required disclosure at one level, so privacy could survive at another. That boundary made celebration possible without making intimacy public property. The permits were strong evidence of a major event, but early coverage often stretched them too far. A street application could establish timing and infrastructure without proving the dress, guest roles, performers, or private vows. The operation depended on this distinction. Responsible reporting limited each document to the questions it could actually answer. The result, limited access without requiring the public to ignore the event. An NYPD planning memo and law enforcement briefings strengthened the location theory. Officers from city, transit, and rail agencies were expected around the Garden because the venue sits above Penn Station during a holiday weekend. Seen as a system, the logic becomes clear. The security problem extended beyond celebrity protection to ordinary movement through a critical transportation district. Privacy emerged from the complete chain, not one dramatic trick. Public paperwork is often mistaken for a leak, but permits exist because private plans can impose public consequences. Residents and commuters need to know when streets close. Police and transport agencies need schedules. Emergency access must remain possible. Vendors need legal authority to construct tents or occupy lanes. The documents reveal logistics because democratic cities cannot allow wealthy organizers to use shared space entirely in secret. In this case, administrative transparency helped journalists identify the wedding while still leaving the ceremony beyond reach. The system worked as intended. The public learned how movement would change, while private vows did not become a government record. Accountability also requires proportion. A celebrity wedding should not receive unlimited public resources merely because it attracts attention. But the city cannot ignore a gathering once crowds and traffic are inevitable. Police presence protects commuters and bystanders as well as invited guests. Barricades can frustrate pedestrians while also preventing a dangerous crush around vehicle entrances. The relevant questions are who requested the services, who paid eligible costs, whether closures were announced, and whether emergency routes remained functional. Those questions are more useful than treating every officer as a private guard or pretending a major event has no public safety consequences outside its doors. CBS reported that 135 officers were assigned around the venue on the wedding day. Barricades kept people from camping directly beside entrances, and street restrictions created enough controlled space for vehicle operations. The stronger evidence points to coordination rather than magic. The police perimeter supported private security rather than replacing it. Accuracy reveals a more interesting operation than rumor ever did. The city's role produced legitimate criticism. New Yorkers faced restrictions near a major station during heat and holiday activity, all for a private celebration attended by people of extraordinary means. The practical consequence is easy to miss. Admiration for Swift and Kelce did not erase the public burden. The approach was expensive, disciplined, and remarkably effective. Later reporting said Swift paid New York City more than $160,000 for costs tied to the wedding permit and added services. The reimbursement addressed questions about who financed the operation. That detail changes the interpretation. Payment did not eliminate inconvenience, but it mattered to the fairness of the arrangement. That boundary made celebration possible without making intimacy public property. Large private events commonly pay permit fees and costs when they occupy public space or require additional municipal support. The wedding was exceptional in attention and scale, not in the basic principle that organizers must coordinate with the city. The operation depended on this distinction. Treating every administrative payment as either scandal or generosity obscures the ordinary civic mechanism. The result, limited access without requiring the public to ignore the event. The public record ultimately revealed enough to make the event legible without opening the ceremony. People could know when roads would close, where crowds would gather, and how the area would operate. Seen as a system, the logic becomes clear. Transparency about public impact coexisted with privacy inside the building. Privacy emerged from the complete chain, not one dramatic trick. What privacy costs and what it protects. Privacy at this level is expensive because recognition changes ordinary movement into a security event. A couple cannot simply ask guests to keep a location quiet when reporters, fans, commercial photographers, and online accounts are watching travel patterns. Seen as a system, the logic becomes clear. Every uncontrolled transition becomes a possible point of exposure. Privacy emerged from the complete chain, not one dramatic trick. Money purchased venue control, professional labor, barriers, covered routes, legal preparation, and the ability to rebuild an arena. Those resources are unavailable to ordinary couples. The public version captured only the surface. The wedding therefore demonstrated both the value of privacy and the inequality of access to it. The evidence supports restraint instead of invented certainty. The operation also used public infrastructure. Police, transport agencies, permits, and street management helped separate crowds from private arrivals. The stronger evidence points to coordination rather than magic. That involvement made public accountability necessary even when ceremony details remained private. Accuracy reveals a more interesting operation than rumor ever did. Criticism of scale should not be dismissed as jealousy. A 1,000-person celebration in Midtown affects residents, commuters, workers, and taxpayers unless costs are allocated clearly. The practical consequence is easy to miss. Ethical analysis can admire the planning while still questioning its footprint. The approach was expensive, disciplined, and remarkably effective. At the same time, expense does not prove emotional emptiness. Large production and genuine commitment can exist together. That detail changes the interpretation. The arena was a technical response to fame, as well as a symbol of it. That boundary made celebration possible without making intimacy public property. The original transcript treated secrecy as a game of decoys, planted leaks, and eliminated guests. That frame made privacy look vindictive or theatrical. The operation depended on this distinction. The confirmed operation suggests something more practical. Reduce exposure, control information, and preserve a meaningful experience. The result, limited access without requiring the public to ignore the event. The most revealing cost may be psychological. A famous couple planning a wedding must treat ordinary acts, such as sending an address, allowing phones, choosing a hotel, or opening a curtain as potential security decisions. Friends become information risks. Workers become credential categories. And spontaneous movement becomes difficult. Professional protection makes the event possible, but it also reminds everyone why protection is needed. The goal is not secrecy for its own sake. It is to create a temporary space where relationships can operate without every gesture being evaluated as footage, evidence, branding, or content for strangers. Privacy also protects the guests who are not public figures. Family members, children, old friends, partners, workers, and community connections may enter the same room as global celebrities without having chosen comparable exposure. A leaked wide shot can reveal more than the couple's clothes. It can identify seating relationships, medical accommodations, security positions, emotional reactions, and people whose presence invites unwanted attention. Restricting phones therefore served a broader group than Swift and Kelce. The most famous people drove demand, but the boundary covered everyone sharing the event. Respecting that fact makes the policy look less like image management and more like collective care. The most personal decisions were also the simplest. The couple chose siblings as attendants and a friend as officiant, while hundreds of famous people filled the wider celebration. The public version captured only the surface. The protected center was relational rather than merely spectacular. The evidence supports restraint instead of invented certainty. Fans outside found ways to celebrate without entering that center. They gathered behind barriers, wore themed clothing, photographed public signs, and shared the atmosphere of a major New York event. The stronger evidence points to coordination rather than magic. Participation did not require possession of the vows. Accuracy reveals a more interesting operation than rumor ever did. A public message on the garden and blue light on the Empire State Building acknowledged the marriage openly. The couple was not pretending the event never happened. The practical consequence is easy to miss. They separated announcement from access. The approach was expensive, disciplined, and remarkably effective. That distinction is the heart of the story. Secrecy hides a fact, while privacy controls who experiences its intimate dimensions. That detail changes the interpretation. The marriage was public, but the ceremony remained private. That boundary made celebration possible without making intimacy public property. The success of the operation depended not only on wealth or technology, but on cooperation. Guests, workers, security teams, public agencies, and many fans accepted limits on what they could record or share. The operation depended on this distinction. A boundary survived because enough people treated it as legitimate. The result limited access without requiring the public to ignore the event. The wedding left an unusual legacy for an era of constant documentation. It showed that a major cultural event could be acknowledged immediately without surrendering every image. Seen as a system, the logic becomes clear. The empty space in the public record became evidence of a choice rather than a failure to uncover the truth. Privacy emerged from the complete chain, not one dramatic trick. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce did not make their wedding invisible. They made it selectively visible. New York saw the barriers, arriving guests, glowing screens, and blue skyline, while the vows, finished room, and most personal images remained with the people invited inside. That separation required money, public coordination, disciplined workers, cooperative guests, and a venue designed to control movement. It also required an audience willing to accept that celebration does not create ownership. The operation's greatest achievement was not hiding a famous couple. It was proving that even a 1,000-person spectacle could preserve a private center. If you enjoyed this deep dive into her life and career, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story.